Hello, I'm Peter Wild, and today I'd like to talk about some of the exercises for grade 5. And I've chosen for my first exercise In the Chapel. And as you would perhaps determine from the title, this has a very contemplative nature, and because of that needs a lot of care and sensitivity when producing the tone and balancing the texture. So the most important thing is that the upper line, which is always readily identifiable because the stems are all pointing up, that needs to sing clearly above the rest of the texture. So there you can hear the longer notes actually being projected, whilst being accompanied in the same hand by a very delicate pattern which is controlled by your second finger and thumb. Perhaps I can just play the right hand on its own. And already you'll hear the layers of the piece building up. It's an andante piece, so it doesn't want to be hurried. We've got to keep a very steady beat, but also we've got to have time to listen to the harmony and be able to coordinate the pedalling, which needs to be absolutely in alignment with the change in harmonies. Think of it as two long phrases. You have the first phrase coming to a close at the G major chord in bar 4, and then you'll feel a lead into the second phrase. The mood of the music changes as it moves more into a minor mode. Let's have a listen to that. So you close the phrase and lead into a new area. And returning to the tranquility of the opening. The last three chords are very organ-like in quality. It's massively important that these are not hurried. Think of them in terms of quavers, so you have 4 quaver beats rather than 2 crotchet beats. This will help to space it out in your mind. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it will give the piece a feeling of poised balance in terms of the rhythm. The second exercise I'd like to play for you is called Penny Farthing. And this is very much about precision in the coordination of hands. So the right hand has the melody line, which is projected with a nice cantabile, and this is accompanied by a left-hand figure in semiquavers, which is following what we might know as an Alberti bass pattern. So the two together. And that's the musical effect of the text as it stands on the page, but we have to add the pedal, and that needs to be added very carefully, pretty much in crotchet beats, though as the notes become more chromatic in bar 2, there'll be an extra pedal change. So let's hear the whole thing. Listen to the effect also on the music when we dispense with the pedal at the beginning of bar 3 and through the first half of bar 4. The music becomes more chromatic in the right hand as you move on to the second half. The A natural, which occurs at the end of bar 2, has a very striking effect. If I could just play from the end of bar 1 into bar 3. So close the phrase and then change the tone. Release again. So each of those quite, let's say, dissonant notes are very much of an expressive yearning quality and need to be played with some intensity. So there's an added emotional intensity to the music. In the final bar, use the poco-rall to allow the hands to fade away through the diminuendo, add the pedal on the second beat and gently place the final chord at the top. The final exercise is a completely different character. It's called Jumping Beans, and it really is great fun to play and uses an irregular time signature of 5/4. So very bouncy, and the bounce of the music comes from the spiky staccato, which is needed almost exclusively when you have the patterns coming in. Little grace notes introduce those phrases. A good technique for that is just to roll your hand across the keys, and that gives you some stability as you move through fingers 2, 3 and 4. When you first start to play in quintuple or 5/4 time, there's a slightly odd feeling, and some people feel that there's a sense of wanting to hesitate at the bar line, but you must always be sure to go on into the next bar. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, moving on with no hesitation, a good sense of forward direction. The other thing to notice, which is important about the structure of the piece, and that is that it starts mezzo forte, but in bar 5, when the opening theme, if you can call it that, comes back again, it's actually mezzo piano. So when you start the piece, you have to ensure that you're bright enough to be able to drop down to a mezzo piano in bar 5. And things like that are important for structure. As pieces get longer, we need to ensure that we're using the dynamics and using fixed points to actually highlight the structure and the way the piece has been put together. Bar 4 is a bit of a trap for counting, so do be careful with the rests there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And similarly in the final bar, you need to come in on the second beat with the left hand. The final bar is a very interesting bar, I think, because the previous bar we have a completely feeling of tonal effect in B flat major, and then suddenly we have the addition of a C flat and a D flat, and they almost sound triumphantly defiant, those notes, as if they're really hitting out against the main key. And then we come back to the B flat. So enjoy the fanfare at the end. Finally, be careful with the fingering in bar 8. I would say bar 8 is probably the trickiest bar to play in the whole piece. It requires quite a long descent with the left hand. And I should start learning that bar well in advance of reaching it in the piece. You need to give your left hand plenty of time to settle in with the fingering, and particularly you need to be sure that you use the same fingering every time you play it. So great fun there, and also with the more expressive exercises that I played earlier, and I hope you enjoy learning and performing those.